Hello, everybody. Welcome to Still Talking. It's a series of short shorts about the Irish whisky industry from the Cologne Distillery point of view. Hello, and welcome back to Still Talking. Today, we're going to talk about mashing in. So, the mash bill, basically mashing in, is what makes Irish pot still whiskey what it is. It's what makes Irish whiskey different from their counterparts. It's what makes Irish whiskey special. And at Cologne, we do it differently. We mash in fresh grains just above the still, and we mix it in by hand using boat paddles. And it makes a huge difference. If you can imagine going into a nice cafe and getting some freshly ground coffee beans and the aromas filling the room, and of course, these go straight into your wonderful coffee, compared to pre-ground coffee, which can be nice but just isn't as good. That's the difference here at Cologne Distillery. You can see that the grains are broken directly above the mash tun and fall in. Once they're fallen in, they're mixed in by hand with care. So bear with me for some history geek stuff. Some people incorrectly believe or understand that pot still Irish whiskey was a result of the malt tax. But in actual fact, the use of malted barley and unmalted barley predates the malt tax in 1785 and even continued after the malt tax was repealed in 1855. This evidence shows that malted produce was used alongside unmalted produce for reasons of flavour, more so than saving money. Now bear with me for some science geek stuff. So when we mix unmalted produce with malted produce, we rely heavily on the malted produce to do the lifting. So the diastatic conversion, basically the conversion of starches to sugars via enzymes, is done by borrowing enzymes from the malted produce. So malted barley lends these enzymes across, and we're mixing our mash in by hand, and every so often we're giving it another stir. And every time we do that, the enzymes are transferred from the malted barley to the unmalted, and those starches are then converted into sugars. And of course, this creates a different flavour profile than the malted produce alone. So when you look at a pot still Irish whiskey, or at least a really good one, you might want to consider what are the different grains doing to the flavours of the whiskey. So in Cologne, we're doing it the right way. We're not just using barley, we're using malted barley, unmalted barley, oats, rye, and wheat, all together making a complex Irish whiskey mash bill for pot still Irish whiskey. What do these different components do to the flavour profile? Malted barley. Malted barley does what we all know and love. Things we're familiar with in a flavour, in a single malt, for instance. Malted barley provides lovely flavours of biscuits, or in Ireland here, like digestive biscuit sort of flavours in your whiskey. Unmalted barley gives what we call pot still spice, and it gives it an oiliness as well and a different character. And at Cologne, it gives us a little bit of watermelon or honeydew in there as well. Oats. Oats are the real saviours of Irish whiskey. Oats gives viscosity and creaminess to your whiskey. And when you malt an oat, it turns into a custard flavour as well as that viscosity and creaminess. So it becomes a super, super grain. Unfortunately, however, the yield of an oat is much less than that of a barley. And another important one is the rye. So rye provides dill, menthol sort of a flavour note, while at the same time gives its own peppery, pot stilly flavour profile in there too. And then lastly, wheat. We've done a lot of work trying to figure out what wheat does to our mash bill. We have to conclude that it gives a breadiness to the whole thing. So what we always like to say in Cologne is you can't make sandwich without bread. So sláinte. So you couldn't beat it.